People know what it feels like to be rejected before they are ever recognized, to be pushed aside and told they don't belong, only to be called back when trouble comes. We live in a world that is quick to discard and slow to remember, yet strangely desperate when strength is suddenly needed. And somewhere between rejection and desperation, many hearts quietly ask if God still sees them when everyone else has already decided who they are. That quiet question leads us to a man whose name is rarely spoken with comfort, yet whose story echoes with the ache of broken beginnings and costly faith. His life begins not with honor, but with exile, not with applause, but with absence. And it is from that forgotten place that the story of Jephthah slowly emerges, reminding us that God often chooses his servants from the edges, not the center. Jephthah was the son of a mighty warrior, yet born to a woman others judged and rejected, and because of this, his own brothers drove him out, denying him inheritance, family, and identity. He fled to the land of Tob, a place on the margins where outcasts gathered and survival shaped character. There, Jephthah became a leader of men, not through privilege, but through hardship. While his family erased him from memory, God was quietly forming him in obscurity, teaching him strength, resolve, and leadership far from the approval of his people. When the Ammonites rose up against Israel, the elders who once rejected Jephthah suddenly remembered his name. In desperation, they sought the very man they had cast out, asking him to lead them into battle. Jephthah did not rush back blindly. He questioned their motives, naming the pain of their past rejection. Yet when they promised him leadership, he agreed, not simply trusting men, but placing his words before God at Mizpah. His return was not fueled by revenge, but by a sense that God might still use him, even after everything that had been taken away. Before the battle, Jephthah attempted peace, recounting Israel's history and God's faithfulness to the Ammonite king, showing wisdom shaped by reflection rather than rage. When peace failed, Jephthah made a vow to God, promising that if victory was granted, he would dedicate to God whatever first came from his house to meet him. God gave victory, and Jephthah returned home triumphant, only to be met by his daughter, his only child, coming out with tambourines and dancing. The joy of victory collided with the weight of his words, and the cost of a rash vow fell heavily on his heart, reminding us that faith spoken without wisdom can carry consequences deeper than we imagine. From Jephthah's life, we learn that rejection does not disqualify a person from God's purpose. Being pushed out by people may actually position us to be shaped by God without distraction. Jephthah's strength was not born in comfort, but in isolation, where he learned to lead without applause. God often prepares his servants in unseen places, allowing wounds to become wells of wisdom before calling them back into the light. His story also warns us about the power of our words before God. Jephthah trusted God, but he tried to secure victory through a vow God never demanded. This teaches us that faith is not proven by dramatic promises, but by obedience and trust in God's character. The presence of God is not something we bargain for. It is something we walk with humbly. When fear drives our prayers, we may speak faster than wisdom, and the weight of our words can linger long after the moment has passed. At the same time, Jephthah's sorrow shows us that God meets people even in the aftermath of their mistakes. Scripture does not portray Jephthah as hardened or careless, but broken and grieving. His story reminds us that God does not abandon his servants when obedience becomes costly. Even when consequences unfold, the presence of God remains near, offering dignity, compassion, and meaning in moments that feel unbearably heavy. In the end, Jephthah's life is not a story of triumph without tears, but of calling shaped by pain and faith tested by consequence. He was rejected, restored, victorious, and wounded all in one lifetime, yet through it all, God was working his purposes beyond human judgment. His story urges us to trust God without trying to control outcomes, to speak with wisdom in his presence, and to remember that even when our stories are complicated, God is still writing them. And perhaps the quiet comfort is this: God does not only meet us at the moment of victory, but also in the long walk home afterward, where joy and sorrow often meet at the same door.